Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Before George and Susan Howorth even had a chance to take off their coats, police say their teenage son opened fire. Within minutes, both parents were dead.
And 16-year-old Emmaus High School student Jeffrey Howorth vanished into the night. The exact same week as the Freeman brothers killing. 2 sets of parents killed in less than a week in the same community. This is the case of Jeffrey Howorth.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 44 of Stop Who Does That? I'm your host, Jackie.
And I'm your host, Jenna.
We hope everyone is having a great week. Well, I'm about to go on night duty tonight. Starting tonight, I will be working 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 3 to 4 nights in a row for the next month. How about you, Jenna?
Oh, yeah. Well, we were preparing to go on our little vacation. I know Jackie just came back from our vacation, and we are preparing to go to our vacation. So just getting all the kids' clothes, my clothes, trying to sort it all out, what to bring. We're getting through that this week, and we're very excited to go to Florida. And we also want to mention to everyone listening, if you have a moment to please give us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate it so much. We're growing, and it just helps us get out there, get into the algorithm, and help other people see the podcast as well. So if you love listening to the episodes, please take a moment to give us a review and 5-star rating.
Yes, and along that same vein, we noticed that we received a particular review on Spotify that we wanted to address. So someone commented on our Lost Boys of Bucks County episode 1, and they claimed that what we had said about Jimmy was incorrect. So we took the episode down pending further review because it had been some time since Jenna and I had looked at the content from that. And we fact checked our resources. And I just want you guys to know everything that we come up with, we do fact check. We post our resources in the show notes. So you can actually take a look at the news articles that we look at and where we're getting our content from. And we did fact check something, and we were correct based on our resources. And I'm only addressing this because I want you guys to know that we take these things seriously. We definitely don't want to be putting out any false information. So the claim was that when we had said Jimmy had a troubled past, but he was making his way. Jimmy did attend Loyola University. Is that right, Jenna? Loyola University at the time of the murders, but he had been expelled from school, and that is what this person took issue with, that he had never been expelled from school.
But he had been in and out of some trouble, as that is what we fact checked with our sources. So
we went back to the article, the news article. It was a reputable article from a local Philadelphia newspaper, and it clearly stated that he had been in some trouble prior, but had been attending college at the time of the murder. So, and this person said we were unlistenable and that we talked about the boys as if they weren't human beings, which I don't think they stuck around long enough to listen to the rest of the episode or part 2, where we talked about the parents and how awful we felt for them. Watching the video, you see them crying. Like, we clearly are very victim empathetic, and I think if you stuck around long enough to listen to us, you know that. So we just wanted to throw that out there, that episode, you will see it re-drop. You might get a notification that it's back and probably wonder, well, why is this appearing again? If you already listened to it, that's because we're just going to put it back out there with a little disclaimer. So again, just wanted to let you guys know we do take those things seriously when we get reviews and comments. And we want to hear from you. We just did our live stream Eternal Instincts while I was on vacation, just to make sure we could get something out there for you guys. And it looks like we've got over 100 downloads in 2 days on it.
Yeah, and we got a lot of great feedback on that. So yeah, if there's any other Netflix like big documentaries coming out, we will definitely be doing that again.
Yeah, we want to know from you. Do you want us to keep doing it? We hear from the same 3 or 4 people each time, and that's the only feedback we get. Or we hear something that we're not doing correct, and we do take it seriously. So whatever feedback you have to give us, we will take it seriously.
We'll take it seriously. Yeah, the good or the bad, whichever it is, we'll take it, and we'll take it seriously. And if you haven't given us any feedback, please do so by going on Apple Podcasts and giving us a review. And
because your feedback helps make us better, and we're really receptive to feedback.
And speaking of reviews and the same people, the same top listeners, which we appreciate so much. We have about 10 top listeners that are always giving us cases and feedback. And, we really appreciate that. And one of our top listeners, my best friend Janine, has recommended another case, as has my friend Doug. They both recommended this case. My friend Doug actually went to high school with the person
subject
that we will be talking about. So thank you, Janine, and thank you, Doug. We really appreciate you. So
yes, Janine, I mean, we should just hire you at this point.
I know.
And then special shout out to Scott for buying multiple items of merch. We do have a merch store, guys. Thank you so much, Scott. I was shocked when I saw.
Yeah, we really appreciate you. And if you haven't checked out our merch store, it's on Fourth Wall. Stop Who Does That on fourthwall.com. And we'll post that in the show notes too. But we have some great stuff on there. So check it out. And
all right, guys,
we're ready.
Get into it for this week's episode. So we kind of are circling back to a previous episode. I don't know if you guys remember the Freeman brothers. We did get a comment on TikTok, actually. Somebody had mentioned the subject of today's episode, and they're like, wait, this guy also did the same thing. So this one's sure to blow your mind. Mm-hmm. So we covered the Freeman brothers back in April, but what we didn't tell you was just days after Brenda and Dennis Freeman were killed by their sons Brian and David on February 26, 1995, the Lehigh Valley was again shaken by another murder of parents. Mm-hmm. Another teenage boy also killed his parents. On March 2nd, so literally the same week, guys, 1995, in the quiet suburbs of the Lehigh Valley, they were hit with, again, another unimaginable crime when George and Susan Howorth were found murdered inside their home at the hands of their own 16-year-old son, Jeffrey. 2 family annihilation cases, both teenage suspects, and a community struggling to understand how something like this could happen twice in the matter of days. This is the case of Jeffrey Howorth.
Before the murders, Jeffrey Howorth appeared to be the last person anyone would suspect of committing such a horrific crime. He came from what many described as a stable, religious, middle-class family in a quiet suburb outside Allentown, Pennsylvania. His father, George Howorth, was a 46-year-old mechanical engineer who also served as a Boy Scout leader and a Sunday school teacher. That's really great. He sounds like a good dad. Boy Scout leader and Sunday school teacher. His mother, Susan, worked as a church secretary and was known as a warm, traditional woman devoted to both her family and the church community. The Howorths had attended the same local church for nearly 20 years, and Jeffrey himself also worked there on the weekends. So they were definitely a religious family. It seems the church and their religion was very important to the whole Howorth family. Jeffrey lived in the family's small white brick ranch home alongside his parents and older brother, Stephen, who was 20 years old at the time and attending Penn State University. Stephen was often viewed as the successful sibling, a high-achieving college student who seemed to excel both academically and socially. According to later reports, Jeffrey quietly struggled in the shadow of his older brother for many years. At Emmaus High School, Jeffrey was known as quiet, polite, and almost invisible. Classmates described him as an all-American boy who kept to himself and never caused any trouble. He was a junior at the school, an above-average student, and a standout swimmer on the varsity swim team. Friends remembered him joking around with teammates in the locker room and acting like a completely normal teenager. Police would later point out that there were no signs of violent extremism or hatred in Jeffrey's life. as opposed to the Freeman brothers, who belonged to that neo-Nazi cult. There was no signs of this in Jeffrey's life. In fact, investigators actually found anti-racism posters hanging in his bedroom. And I do want to add that my friend Doug went to Emmaus High School with Jeffrey when all of this happened. Jeffrey was a junior and Doug was a sophomore at the high school. At the Emmaus High School, this affected the entire school. Doug told me it was a huge deal, especially with the Freeman brothers killing just days before. The Freeman brothers was in a different school district, but Doug said that when this happened, Jeffrey didn't show up for school the next day, and everybody was buzzing about it in the whole school.
Wow.
I know, I can't imagine. It's just, you feel like it's something you read about in other communities, especially as a high school student. You don't think something like that would ever happen to a family from your high school.
Well, it's like lightning striking twice. You'd be like, well, it happened down the road. What are the odds it's really going to happen here?
Yeah.
And again, Jeffrey doesn't show signs of being aggressive. I mean, I feel like with the Freeman brothers, the way they presented themselves, you kind of were like,
the writing was on the wall with the Freeman.
with those ones, but this one was a little less obvious.
Yes. And so behind all that calm exterior, Jeffrey was reportedly struggling with a deep depression, feelings of inferiority, and overwhelming academic pressure that few people around him recognized. His defense team would later argue that he suffered from an undiagnosed learning disability that made keeping up with schoolwork extremely exhausting and emotionally draining, despite maintaining decent grades. According to those close to the case, Jeffrey became consumed with comparing himself to his older brother Stephen and felt he could never live up to the expectations placed on him by his family, school, and community. And that's a lot to burden for a 16-year-old child.
Yeah, and to be struggling with a learning disability, which back then, I'm sure they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the screening tools to figure out what could be going on.
No.
And then getting decent grades, you're kind of masking it too.
Yeah.
So
he was internally dealing with a lot that was all inside. And yeah, as we talked before, a 16-year-old, their brain's not fully developed. You know, he had no way to probably even verbalize his feelings.
Right. Well, investigators later determined that the psychological pressure may have intensified dramatically in the days leading up to the murders. Jeffrey had recently received disappointing SAT scores, and on the day of the shootings, he reportedly failed a Spanish exam. It sounds like it was like a double whammy for him that week.
It sounds like he was really hard on himself, because we've all failed tests before. I mean, maybe some people haven't, but I mean, like I have. And I mean, I was never that hard on myself. You know, just sounds like he was applying a lot of personal pressure.
Right, because he cared. He cared about his grades. His defense team would later describe those events as the final breaking point in what they believed had been a long hidden downward spiral unfolding beneath the surface of an otherwise normal teenage life. This is where Jeffrey's mental break started to crack. On Thursday, March 2nd, 1995, Jeffrey Howorth appeared to go through what seemed like a completely normal day. He attended classes at Emmaus High School and later spoke with a friend on the phone around 4 p.m., giving no obvious indication that anything was wrong. That same afternoon, Jeffrey's parents were making their usual trip home. His father, George Howorth, left a work-related training class at Pennsylvania Power and Light around 3:50 p.m. Investigators later found a receipt on his body showing he was still alive at 4:19 p.m. Meanwhile, Susan left her job at Asbury United Methodist Church around 4:10 p.m. Police believe the couple arrived home sometime between 4:15 and 4:30 p.m. As George and Susan entered their home after a typical workday, just like they always have done 100 times before, Jeffrey lay in wait. According to investigators, George and Susan were ambushed almost immediately after entering the home. Authorities later stated there were signs of, quote, movement inside the home, suggesting the victims may have attempted to react or flee after the shooting began. Coroner Wayne Snyder said it appeared that the couple was caught completely off guard and shot shortly after walking through the door before they even had a chance to settle in from the day. To wait until after school makes it seem like something in Jeffrey snapped that day, and he had to do it that afternoon. Roughly 30 minutes later, Jeffrey's 20-year-old brother, Stephen, returned home from his internship at the local oil company and made the horrifying discovery both of his parents were dead inside the family home. Susan was shot 9 times, and George was shot 5 times. I mean, I can't imagine how scary this was for Stephen to walk in like a normal day and then find his parents like this and not knowing who in the world could do something like this, who would want to do something like this to his parents. I mean, for all Stephen knew, it could have been an intruder that was still there.
Mm-hmm. You know what it's reminding me of, Jackie, is the Apt family massacre where George Gershwin lay in wait, and as they all entered the home, which we talked about, the home being your safe place, you're entering the front door just like you always do. It's actually almost the identical thing.
Yeah. And similar to George, Jeffrey's missing. Jeffrey is nowhere to be found. And I'm sure Stephen is confused at this point. Why are my 2 parents dead and my brother Jeffrey's missing? He's probably thinking whoever killed my parents kidnapped Jeffrey.
Yes, I would think that would be my first thought as well, because who's going to think that my 16-year-old brother is the one who did this? I just don't think
the quiet one, of course. Nobody ever suspects the quiet one.
No. So the murders of George and Susan Howorth came just days after another horrific family murder shook the Lehigh Valley. Like we mentioned before, a case we covered earlier this year, the killings committed by brothers Brian and David Freeman. Dennis and Brenda Freeman were killed on Sunday, February 26th, and George and Susan Howorth were killed later the same week, Thursday, March 2nd. Because the 2 cases happened within the same week and both involved teenage sons accused of murdering their own families, many people began to wonder if there was a connection. And if you haven't listened to our episodes on the Freeman brothers, check that out. But investigators strongly denied any link between the cases, describing Jeffrey and the Freeman brothers as, quote, opposite extremes. Unlike the Freemans, who were associated with neo-Nazi ideology, police noted that Jeffrey appeared to reject racism entirely, even pointing out anti-racism posters hanging in his bedroom. Authorities also stressed that Jeffrey had no prior criminal history, disciplinary issues, or known violent behavior. In fact, nearly everyone who knew Jeffrey described him as a quiet, respectful, and easygoing teenager. Friends called him the all-American boy, and classmates said he wouldn't hurt a fly. School officials confirmed he had never been in trouble. A longtime swimmer on the Emmaus High School swim team, Jeffrey was viewed as a normal teenager from a normal family, which only deepened the shock and confusion surrounding the murders. As news spread across the community, neighbors, classmates, teammates, and even school administrators struggled to make sense of what had happened. To many people in the Lehigh Valley, it felt almost impossible that 2 seemingly ordinary suburban families could be devastated by such unimaginable violence only days apart. And it's just truly mind-blowing. I mean, to have 2 sets of parents murdered days apart in the neighboring towns in the same community by boys who are about the same age, just a few short days apart. It's unimaginable. In a rambling note found on top of a desk in Howorth's bedroom, the teen stated his intention to murder his parents, according to Lehigh County District Attorney Robert Steinberg. The note said, quote, "I told you I would do it, Steve. You can't say I didn't warn you." In the note, he also intended on taking his own life. Steinberg said Howorth, a junior at Emmaus High School, didn't target anyone else in the note. It was believed Jeffrey may have been armed because 3 weapons, the .22 caliber rifle police believed he used to kill his parents, a handgun, and a shotgun, were missing from the home at 4524 East Texas Road. Authorities soon alleged that Jeffrey fled the scene in the family's red 1993 Chevy Lumina, prompting an intense manhunt across eastern Pennsylvania. By the next day, Friday, March 3rd, police began searching for him by both ground and air. Helicopters combed the Lehigh Valley and surrounding areas, hoping to spot the missing vehicle, while troopers also searched locations Jeffrey was known to frequent. One of those locations was the Resica Falls Boy Scout Reservation in Monroe County, where Jeffrey had reportedly enjoyed camping. Investigators believed he could potentially be hiding in wooded areas or attempting to survive the outdoors. Despite the growing search effort, police admitted they had no clear leads on where Jeffrey had gone, leaving the community on edge as the teenage suspect remained missing. So he did the same thing that the Freeman brothers did. He took off in the family car, same thing. And there's a manhunt. It's like, we just did this.
Well, I was just going to say the Freeman brothers, I believe that manhunt was still going on.
Yes, I believe they were not found until March 9th. March 9th.
Yeah, it took a while. And I was just thinking of all the resources that are out there looking for the Freeman brothers. Now we've got people looking for Jeffrey. So I can understand why people thought these were connected.
And it was like pretty quick police work to determine it was Jeffrey who did this. I mean,
he left the note.
There was no question. Yeah.
Right.
He left the note, all the guns were missing and the car was missing. So at least the community knew it wasn't like some crazy person running around town. I mean, well,
yeah,
crazy, but it wasn't like a random.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the massive manhunt for Jeffrey came to an end late on the night of March 3rd, 1995, nearly 800 miles away from Pennsylvania in Missouri. So like the Freeman brothers, he got out of state at least.
Yeah.
After days of searching, Missouri state troopers discovered the Howorth's family's red 1993 Chevy Lumina abandoned along Interstate 70, 50 miles west of St. Louis. The car had simply run out of gas. I guess he had no more money to buy more gas.
Yeah.
At first, troopers believed that the vehicle had been abandoned, but after running the license plate through a national law enforcement database, they realized it belonged to the teenage suspect wanted in the murders of George and Susan. Roughly 90 minutes later, while officers remained at the scene gathering information, they noticed a young man watching them from a nearby field. With weapons drawn, troopers approached him, and the teenager identified himself as Jeffrey. He was taken into custody without incident. Nearby, police recovered a backpack, a loaded .22 caliber rifle, ammunition, and a shotgun hidden beneath the car. Investigators later revealed that Jeffrey had very little money left with him and appeared to have been attempting to continue traveling west. As the arrest made headlines, Lehigh County prosecutors announced Jeffrey would be charged and tried as an adult for the murders of his parents. Investigators also began discussing a note allegedly written by Jeffrey before the killings, a rambling message that hinted at bitterness, academic pressure, struggles surrounding SAT scores, and problems at home. Authorities stressed that there was no evidence of abuse or issues involving drugs or girlfriends, but prosecutors suggested Jeffrey had become deeply angry and resentful in the days leading up to the murders. Even as the community tried to process Jeffrey's arrest, officials continued drawing comparisons to the Freeman brothers' murders that happened just days earlier. I mean, how could you not?
Yeah.
Once again, investigators insisted the two crimes were unrelated, but for many in the Lehigh Valley, the fact that two separate teenage family murder cases unfolded within the same week felt almost impossible to comprehend. And I have to say, back then, I don't know if you would attest to this, Jenna, but I felt like back then parents wanted to blame everything on Satanism and
all the old Sally Jesse shows I watched.
Music.
Yeah, my child's a Nazi. It was a big theme in the 90s, that neo-Nazi ideology. Bad. My teen is bad. I'm scared of my teen. It seemed, or send my teen to boot camp. It definitely was a theme going on.
I bet you people were like, did these boys become possessed by something? And
with the Satanism, and were they part of a cult? I mean, the Freeman brothers were, but who knows? Was Jeffrey? Who really knew he was quiet? I mean, he could have been part of a cult. There's so many questions. I do want to say, when we're talking about his struggles, to me, it sounds like normal teenage issues, like academic struggles, worrying about your SAT score, pressure for school and athletics. I mean, that's what's so sad to me about this case is that all teenagers go through that. And I don't know if he felt like he couldn't talk to his parents about.
Yeah.
But they were
I wonder if we don't know the details of like how they were towards him.
Right.
If they were constantly comparing him to Steven and he really just couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
But, if there's any teenagers listening, just know that we've all been there. We've all been through these struggles, and it does get better. I promise you, it does get better.
Just a few short years of your life with the school, and it feels heavy at the time, but like you said, we've all been through it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were such prominent figures in their church. Jeffrey worked at the church. And that makes me question again, was there no church leader or like older, confidant, confidant, type person he could talk to?
Yeah.
It's so important to have someone to talk to.
I know. We do have more resources nowadays. Now we have school counselors that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had one back then. If somebody went there back then, can let us know. But it's really sad.
So quiet and shy. He just didn't feel comfortable. It's just, he did a heinous thing. It just breaks my heart that this young boy was really struggling and going through something internally, and he felt so alone. I'm like really heartbroken over this case. It just makes me sad. Yeah. So Jeffrey's trial did begin later that year in October. So this happened in March, and then by October, they were going to trial. It focused heavily on the horrifying details of how George and Susan Howorth were killed inside their family home on March 2nd, 1995. Prosecutors used graphic crime scene photos, blood-stained clothing, and emotional forensic testimony to show jurors exactly what happened during the shootings. During testimony, Jeffrey reportedly appeared visibly disturbed when shown images of his mother's body, grimacing and even shielding his eyes from the photographs. And that doesn't sound like a cold-blooded killer to me. It seemed like he was having an emotional reaction.
Mm-hmm.
The prosecution argued Jeffrey deliberately murdered his parents because he blamed them for the intense pressure and feelings of inadequacy he had been struggling with for years. The defense, however, claimed Jeffrey was suffering from severe depression and was legally insane at the time of the killings. According to forensic testimony, George Howorth was shot 5 times with his own .22 caliber Marlin rifle shortly after entering the home. 1 bullet entered through his mouth, piercing his tongue and spinal cord. A wound pathologist said this would have caused near instant paralysis. He was also shot multiple times in the face, chest, and abdomen, with experts testifying that the injuries caused catastrophic blood loss and death within minutes. Susan Howorth arrived home shortly after and suffered even more extensive injuries. Pathologists testified she was shot 9 times, including once in the face and 8 times in the back. Several wounds shattered teeth, damaged her lungs, and severed major blood vessels. Prosecutors pointed to blood trails throughout the home as evidence that Susan attempted to turn away and flee from the gunman after being shot. Experts testified she likely struggled to breathe and bled heavily before dying less than 5 minutes later. That's a very bloody scene, Jackie.
Yeah, and she had her back to him, so she was trying to run.
And that's probably why he shot her 8 times in the back. 8 times? So they showed all of these photos, and I can't imagine the horror of the jurors, having to look at this. Throughout the emotional testimony, Jeffrey sat quietly beside his attorney, occasionally rubbing his eyes, bowing his head, or fidgeting with his tie as jurors listened to the devastating details of his parents' final moments. After a highly publicized trial, Jeffrey Howorth was found not guilty by reason of insanity in the murders of his parents. The verdict shocked many people in the Lehigh Valley, especially because prosecutors had argued the killings were planned and deliberate. He did leave a note.
There is intent there, and I'm just comparing it to Richard Griest, which we knew he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. he didn't wake up that day planning to kill
No.
his family. And he also believed he was saving them from the devil. And from what we know of that, you have to have like a loss of touch with reality.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have agreed with this.
I
Not guilty.
I
There's
don't-
no insanity.
I don't know either, Jackie, because he left the note, even if he scribbled the note 5 minutes before he decided to do this,
Yeah.
it shows intent.
Yeah.
And he took the 3 guns.
Yeah.
Three guns. You know, that's a lot of that. I don't
Yeah.
think if you're snapping like Richard Greased in the moment like that, I mean, you're not
Mhm.
gathering up an arsenal of guns. So
Yeah.
I don't know if perhaps the jury felt sorry for him because of all the
Yeah.
pressures, you know, and he's 16 and all the pressures that he was facing. I'd like to know the demographics of this jury, actually. I think I'm going to look into that. I would just like to know, like, how many women.
Yeah, I wonder if they were mothers.
That's what I'm thinking.
I mean, he definitely is somebody that you can feel sorry for to a point.
Yeah.
But it kind of reminds me, it reminds me of the Reiner case. Yeah, where he ran after killing his parents.
Nick Reiner. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're saying like, well, the fact that you knew to run and then block your windows out in the hotel room, that tells us you know you did something wrong. So I kind of agree with that. I mean, you knew you needed to run. You brought guns with you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So that's what happened. The jury agreed not guilty by reason of insanity. During the trial, the defense focused heavily on Jeffrey's deteriorating mental state in the months leading up. While maybe that helped contribute to the ruling, if they really honed in on his mental state and how it just plummeted. Defense attorneys argued that despite appearing like a normal teenager on the surface, Jeffrey was suffering from severe depression, overwhelming feelings of inadequacy, and an undiagnosed learning disability that caused him intense emotional distress. According to the defense, Jeffrey had become consumed by academic pressure, fears about disappointing his parents, and constant comparisons to his older brother. Psychiatrists who testified for the defense claim Jeffrey was experiencing a severe mental breakdown at the time of the shootings and was incapable of truly understanding the nature or wrongfulness of his actions. They described him as emotionally detached, deeply depressed, and psychologically overwhelmed in the days leading up to March 2nd. So what they're describing is kind of like a psychotic break.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he had a good legal team. The defense...
he did.
He really did. The defense also pointed to the rambling note Jeffrey allegedly left behind, which referenced school struggles, SAT scores, feelings of failure as evidence of his deteriorating mental state. And prosecutors disagreed with this, arguing that Jeffrey's actions showed planning and awareness, which we talked about. They pointed to the fact that he armed himself with the rifle, waited for the parents to come home, and fled the scene afterward, which is what you said, Jackie. Fled. Drove across multiple states and carried the weapons and ammunition while on the run. All signs, they argued that he understood what he had done and was trying to avoid capture.
I agree.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, Richard Greased, we do have that infamous photo of him running from the police, but
I mean, he was
just wackadoo at that point. Like
you can tell from that picture of Richard Greased, like that is a crazy man. Like he had,
I don't even think he understood who was chasing him. He just knew he was being chased. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I fully agree. Like, I think that picture captured the whole psycho craziness of Richard. Yet to drive across state lines, carry the gun, he knew what he did was wrong.
Yeah. And you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking that he was feeling the pressure. He didn't like that they were comparing him to his brother. And he just thought, if they're out of the way, I don't have these feelings anymore. I'm not, because they're the root of his problems in his mind, right? So I think he thinks, if I take them out, I don't have anyone to disappoint.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Ultimately, the jury sided with the defense, surprisingly, and concluded that Jeffrey was legally insane at the time of the murders. Instead of being sentenced to prison, he was committed to a state psychiatric hospital for treatment. So, like we talked about in Richard Greased, you're not remanded to prison, you're remanded to a state psychiatric hospital, and you're not given a definitive length of treatment or sentence. It's just whenever they feel you're ready to return to society. So this verdict remains one of the most controversial aspects of this case, especially given the brutality of the murders and the community's struggle to reconcile the image of Jeffrey as a quiet, all-American teenager with the violence of what occurred inside the Howorth home. Similarly to Richard Griest's case, it is hard to comprehend the harsh violence and not think that someone knew what they were doing at the time. But just like with Richard Griest, it was determined that in the moment that these crimes were committed, Jeffrey was insane. And just like Richard Griest's case, every year a judge reevaluates Jeffrey. And in 2006, more than a decade after the murders, Jeffrey is still committed to Norristown State Hospital, which is where Richard stayed as well, following his 1995 verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. In 2006, a Lehigh County judge approved transferring Jeffrey, then 28 years old, from the hospital's criminal forensic unit to a less restrictive but still secure civil unit within the facility. The decision came after hospital psychiatrists testified that Jeffrey had made significant progress in treatment over the years. Doctors stated that unlike earlier review hearings where he rarely discussed the murders or showed remorse, Jeffrey started beginning to openly talk about what had happened and expressed more understanding of his actions. Mental health professionals also testified that he no longer appeared to show signs of a severe mental disorder and could benefit from a different therapeutic environment focused more on long-term rehabilitation. I just want to point out, Richard, he was released in the later 2000s, so I'm sure he and Jeffrey crossed paths.
I'm sure they did because we know Richard was at the most minimum security portion of the hospital.
Yeah. Despite the transfer, officials stressed that Jeffrey was not being released into the public. He would remain in a locked and secure psychiatric setting, although patients in that unit could potentially earn limited supervised privileges in the future. Just like we talked about, Richard was allowed to go to church. He was allowed out at times and had curfews to abide by.
He was getting free passes to go out into the outside world.
Yeah. Prosecutors did not oppose the transfer, but emphasized that authorities were proceeding cautiously given the severity of the crimes. During the hearing, the judge acknowledged the significance of the decision and told Jeffrey the court expected him to continue cooperating with the treatment step by step. Meanwhile, Jeffrey's older brother, Stephen, who discovered the parents' bodies back in 1995, continued to attend hearings related to the case, but reportedly did not speak to his brother. And that is where Jeffrey remains today, Norristown State Hospital in Norristown, Pennsylvania. He is now 48 years old and has been at the state hospital for over 30 years. He certainly has had plenty of life left. And as we saw with Richard Griest's case, it is plausible that he may be released one day. But until then, or if that ever happens, his case will be evaluated annually. And we hope he has remorse for what he did and has been able to rehabilitate slowly every year. He does have the chance to obtain freedom again, have a family, and even just like many of his peers from Emmaus High School have gone on to do so. So time will tell if Jeffrey is ultimately cleared to go back to society, which this is such an interesting difference in how I think we view this case versus Richard, because I felt like it was a little more clear cut that Richard was he lost touch with reality.
Yeah, this case, I can see why the verdict was so controversial at the time. And I talked to my friend Doug shortly before we got on here to record, and Doug said it is known amongst their peers from the high school that Jeffrey has absolutely no desire to get out of Norristown State Hospital. He wants to stay there. He adamantly does not want to go back on the outside world.
Wow.
And that's really sad.
Is it because he feels like he doesn't deserve freedom? I wonder.
Doug said it is just well known he doesn't want to be out here. I feel like that could be a part of it. I feel like also he doesn't, by this time, he has lost touch with the world is nothing like it was in 1995.
No.
And he's stuck in at that time. I mean, mentally, maybe he's doing a little better, but what a difference, because Richard Grease was like getting married, having wives, he was released to his wife, his latest wife. And even though he only had maybe like 10 years left, I mean, he lived his life. It just seems like Jeffrey does not even want to get out here to the world. He doesn't even want the opportunity if it were to fall at his feet.
It could be rooted in being remorseful, or like you said, it's like, this world is so different. Why? Or he doesn't trust himself. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of emotions.
Shame.
There.
Maybe there's a lot of shame too. And
yeah.
like Richard was released to his wife. He had a home to go to and a place to go. Jeffrey and his brother don't talk. Understandably, I would be upset just like Stephen is. So if he has no family and nowhere to go, this is his home that he's known for 30 years. I could see that.
And only 48. I don't know why. Like, it feels like 1995 was so long ago. But
I know.
Again, he was only 16 at the time. So it's like, wow, he really is young.
Yes, considering, he could live till he's 70 some years old. That's just a long time to be in the state hospital. It really is. And this case is just very heartbreaking. And Stephen, I hope, has gone on to have a family and a life, to try to pick up the pieces from this. But just as in the Nick Reiner case, like, his siblings don't want anything to do with him either.
Right. I was just thinking of what the inside of those facilities look like. They're so drab.
I know.
There's not many windows, a lot of fluorescent lighting. You only probably get a couple hours a day outside. Like, and that's been his life since he was 16 years old. Like, that alone would make me go crazy, I think.
Yeah, I think he probably just is so used to it. He can't even comprehend anything different at this point.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's best that he stays, and maybe it's good. Maybe it's good that he knows that about himself, that that's the best place for him to be. It's just a heartbreaking case. And it
didn't need to go that route.
No, and it's a case that's a little bit overshadowed because of the Freeman brothers killing happening just days prior. So not many people are fully aware of Jeffrey's story. And so that's why we wanted to share it today with all of you.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next week with a new one.
Okay, bye.